Hey, and welcome to our next live question and answer session. I am Megan Miesler, Executive Director at Lutheran Counseling Services, and I'm joined today by Rick Armstrong. Rick, will you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us who you are.
Yes, I'm Rick Armstrong. I presently serve as Ministry Care Coordinator at Lutheran Counseling Services. I am a ordained pastor, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm partially retired. I'm in the older adult category, I guess. So seeing clients 2 to 3 days a week here at LCS.
Yeah, so we are talking about older adults and mental health. So asked Rick to join us. Rick is also the former director here at Lutheran Counseling Services, so knows a lot about how LCS has served older adults in the past. And we want to talk about that a little bit today, as well as just answer some questions regarding older adults and mental health. So if you're joining us live, please feel free to be part of the conversation. Comment any questions or things that you want to talk about, or anything contributing to what we're chatting about, whether you agree or disagree. If you're joining us later, please feel free to share some comments. We're going to be talking about older adults and mental health all week on our social media, through our stories on our Instagram and Facebook platforms. So want to continue that conversation. But first, I would love to just chat about how LCS began serving older adults. So Rick, you want to take us a little bit through that history of where LCS kind of started this niche for serving older adults in the community?
Well, as I remember it, years past, one of our former therapists, Mary Jacob, she did some work individually in some of the senior housing institutions around the Orlando area, kind of individually as calls came in from there and all. And so we did work in that way. We also, being connected to Christian congregations and other congregations, was a source of referral for people who, fortunately, the predominant age group in congregations is becoming older adults. And so many of them got referred to us, and so we did work in that way. But oh gosh, somebody's going to have to tell me what year it was. But a number of years ago, Angie came to us. She was beginning her registered intern after completing her master's degree at Rollins, and she wanted to emphasize older adult work. And she came with this idea that I remember when she first came with it. I thought, yeah, we've tried that, it's not going to work. But if you want to try it, go ahead. And her idea was to go into, and she had one of the specific locations that we still serve, the Plymouth, and that she wanted to go in there and provide groups for various different situations, mental health issues, struggles, grief and loss, gratitude times, holiday times. And she wanted to provide groups, education groups and support groups, and felt that in doing that, she could be helpful for the community and the residents. But also from that, she knew that she probably would get some individual clients as well. Applied for some funding from an organization, got turned down, but she had a friend in the community who really had the same kind of passion, Linda. And for much of that work and everything, Linda was the major supporter of that work, while Angie did it for the 2 to 3 years of her internship, and then as it got passed on to others, and continues to be today. And so, and what we discovered is that, yeah, if you give them a chance to talk the stuff in groups, if you do it from a very engaging perspective, which Angie is a very engaging individual and makes you laugh, and so does it in a non-threatening way, it makes people feel more comfortable to start looking at themselves and looking at those issues that they've been struggling with for all their lives. And so it really worked. The groups took off, did well. the individual sessions took off, and it just it became a wonderful experience to reach out and to do that and help people at that age, so in that place in life. So yeah.
And one of the things I remember that she was really passionate about is having a gratitude group once a month. And
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
gratitude groups became a place where people could change their perspective, or maybe, how they were, where their mind was focusing on during the week. I know you participated in some of them, and you would come in, especially around the holidays times, because we know with
Hmm.
older adults, the holidays seem to be a significant issue.
Well, and especially for some people who live in senior housing and families not around, it's not a happy time, and it is a very difficult time. And so yeah, I remember Angie coming to me and talking about how there's just a lot of pain in the lives of some of these people, and a lot of what she heard was negativity and being down on life. And so she had read some stuff, and we started processing together. How do you put together a group where the rule is you can't talk negative, you have to talk positive? And she said, well, one of the things I've learned is many of these people are rule followers, and so
Yep.
we can do some of that. And those were some of our strongest groups. That and the holiday groups, and the holiday groups were really important for people. But we dealt a lot with a lot of other issues and everything, and some contemporary issues of the times and everything as well. So
One of the
it really
groups
became a great ministry. Yeah.
One of the groups I remember specifically I was a part of is following the Pulse shooting, which the Plymouth is not far from downtown
Mhm.
Orlando, where we started this program. Was we brought the comfort dogs in, and so having
Mhm.
the older adult community, just realizing what they were going through with this being so close to their community, I remember that being such a great piece
Mhm.
to offer
Mhm.
them comfort. But also, so we've continued the older adult program. Angie isn't any longer on our staff, but she continues to support this ministry, as well as Linda. So we run groups in the Plymouth, at the Lutheran Haven, and at Calvary Towers. And that model of starting with groups, and especially, I'm going to be careful because I'm young, but especially getting the older generation talking about topics that haven't always been comfortable to talk about throughout their life. I
Mhm.
think we found that model of starting in groups, and then it can lead to some individual work. Why do you think that's a piece that's effective in older adult communities?
Well, the culture for older adults, the culture always was um, um, that you don't talk about your problems. You don't talk about your problems outside of family. You might not even be able to talk about your problems inside of family. And many of them, and I'm got a recognition in a church, so I can say this. Um, the church doesn't always want to recognize the emotional mental health struggles that go on. And if you just love Jesus strong enough and believed in him strong enough, all that stuff would go away. And so there's a lot of prohibitions on that. There's a lot of even shame that in some ways got associated with that for people. But what I discovered, I remember sitting in on some of her first groups and everything, since I was going to be her supervisor and everything. I remember sitting there and looking around the room and saying, man, this is no different in terms of the mental health issues that are going on than if I were to bring in a group of 30s and 40s. Because the difference is some of these folks have been dealing with these issues all their lives and not being allowed to do something about them.
Mhm.
And that really what troubled me when I initially saw that is, and it's what I try to do whenever I work with folks, is whatever their mental health issue is, bipolar, panic disorder, adjustment disorder, grief and loss, those are conditions that you have to deal with. They do not have to define your being. And there's a separation of them and you. And for many of those people in those initial groups at the Plymouth, I saw that those things defined their being because they had not been given the permission to see them otherwise and a way to deal with them otherwise in that way. And so empowerment became real important, and doing discussions around strength. Where's your strength as opposed to where's your deficit? and those became real important things for those people. So it was really important to see that, and just kind of an eye opener for, I kind of knew that that was the case, but there it was live and in living
Right in front of
person.
your
So,
face. I
yeah,
found when I
yeah.
worked a lot in those communities, it was a lot of people just needing to tell their story. Because, like you said, there weren't
Mhm,
platforms or places to always share it. As we've created
mhm,
probably more in our society today, there was definitely
mhm,
that mentality that, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, then you shouldn't say anything, right? Like, you should just keep those
mhm,
things to yourself. And so,
mhm,
trying to break
mhm.
those down, you hear a lot of people's stories. Another I remember interviewing people to work in our older adult program, and we'd ask them, so what do older adults, what mental health issues do they deal with? And we were looking for the right answer that would be, you remember?
All of them,
This, right, all of them, the same as anybody else. It makes
same as
them
anybody else.
no
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
But
yeah.
some of the groups
Yeah.
I know that we run and continue to run, one specifically at Lutheran Haven is caregiver group. So as we talk about older adults, we know there is this dynamic that comes a lot with being a caregiver of your spouse, or a caregiver of another family member. So I would say that's another issue I predominantly seen in older adults. What
Mhm.
what are some other things that you've experienced with older adults in mental health?
Depression. And again, I think it goes back to some of those shame-based ideas and prohibitions that depression, if you believed enough, if you could just get happy enough and get busy, you could get rid of depression. And I remember working a congregation where there was one of the staff people took their life, and we got involved in the recovery from that and trying to teach, especially older adults, that depression is not a matter of the will, and it's not a matter of not believing in Jesus enough. The depression, by and large, is a physiological issue, just like diabetes and asthma.
Mhm.
And but that was hard to understand and hard to see whenever the years and years and years had taught you otherwise. And so yeah. Um,
I know you and I also would run a lot of grief groups at one time in our
hmm
work together. And
hmm
so, and that was often comprised of a lot of older adults too, and
hmm
under just teaching about the concepts of grief. And again, like allowing yourself to experience grief,
hmm
allowing your body to
hmm
go through it, I think is another one we often see in older adults at this time. And not just grieving losses, because I know when you and I run grief groups, that's the piece. Like, even in being a caregiver, you're grieving your spouse before they have died, or you're grieving the loss of what you thought this relationship would and could be. So a lot of
hmm
losses, I think, is another piece that comes up in older adults.
Yeah, and I think by and large, I wouldn't say all the time, but by and large, whenever we've done, and whenever you and I've done grief groups, and when I've done some other ones too, if the issue is loss, loss of job, loss of loved one, loss of career, loss of income, those are all losses, and we're going to deal with all of those losses in the same group. And what I most of the time found that was interesting to me is older adults got that.
Mhm.
It was the younger people in the group that says, "Well, you losing your job can't be as bad as me losing my child." And we would say, we're not in here to do good or bad, but it's the same issue. And older adults would find a way to say that, and probably because they had been through multiple losses of people, of jobs, of income, of homes, and they could see where all of it was the same. They could see where some pieces of it was different, but they could see where all of it was the same too, because of that long life of experience filled with loss. Yeah. So.
I think one of the other issues that comes up with older adults, which maybe we joke about, or it's just a piece, they can often get really pulled into the political atmosphere very
Hmm.
easily. Maybe use their time because they have more time to get pulled into that, or get pulled into other things, and maybe even become victims of scams or pieces like that. And we've definitely walked through walked that road with older adults as maybe they are having to, figure out and decipher some of those things. But what's hit me recently is, especially through COVID, as we've seen older adults really be more and more isolated. What I have found, and I don't know how you feel about this, but older adults have always been isolated. Like they value trips to the grocery store a bit more than probably I do. They value time where they interact with people a lot more. And so now when we've isolated them even more, what have you seen more during COVID with older adults and the challenges that they've experienced?
Oh, I've seen as I listen to them, and I'm okay. I'm good with that. That generally a lot of our older adults were scared and are scared. I mean, it didn't have to be real smart to figure out that some average ages of who was dying and the conditions that made the situation worse. And they take a look at what's prescribed on the bottle or what the diagnosis of their doc says, and they real clearly define that as me. And so there was a lot of fear they had in that. There was also some isolation also in older adults who have older adult parents who were in nursing homes that they could not see, and or older adult friends who were in assisted livings that they could not see, and that was very difficult for them too. And many of them had relatives or spouses who were in the hospital sick with COVID, and they could not see them either. And for some, the good news was that they survived and they came back home and all was well. For others, that they didn't, and that painful piece of having not to been able to spend that last time with their loved ones. And so there's just a lot of ways that I think COVID hit them in difficult ways. Not to mention, for most of them, my family kind of did this somewhat different. For most of them, they could not see their kids and their grandkids because their kids and grandkids had to be out there and had to be in an area in which there was some exposure, and they couldn't, and that was difficult. You could understand it on one day that they need to do that, but then whenever you're lonely and all, you kind of feel hurt and everything. Why can't you do this for me? And there was that battle that went on within there too. Yeah. So.
And I think what we're seeing right now, and one of the questions that we did receive to talk about today, is how do I overcome that fear as an older adult to get back to engaging with people? I think the specific question we got was that mask has made me feel so safe. And so overcoming that fear and that anxiety to really get back and interact with people, depending on where you are in the country. Obviously, we are here in Florida, and I know other parts are different. But what have you encouraged or talked through with people as we've talked about that fear of returning to normal, or at least getting past what it is you can and can't control?
I first of all, I try to do this in most areas, is what is your primary care physician saying to you? Mm-hmm. I want them to go and deal with the facts as given to them by someone that they trust, because I don't, they can ask the question and I don't know what the conditions are they're dealing with. I don't know whatever it is. And so for me to kind of give some stated blanket answers, I don't think that's fair, because it's individual situations. I also say that, I read, where did I read that? I read somewhere a person talking about the fact that not only during this past year did they not get COVID, they wore masks regularly and did not get COVID. They said, I did not get the flu. I did not have a cold for a whole year, and usually I catch 2 or 3 colds. And she said, I'm not real sure I'm going to give up my mask yet. Mm-hmm. And because there's other things that can guard against that. We're in a pollen season. I know lots of people that mow their yard with wearing a mask, and it's a whole lot more accepted today than it used to be accepted. But I've also talked to folks who I had a niece who lived in Japan for a number of years, and she told me that wearing masks was just an accepted thing. Yeah. I mean, we in this culture don't want that restriction. Well, there's some things that come with it, and maybe it's okay. And you're right, it caught up into a political issue, which was a shame. And so I would say to the first person that they first of all need to check with the doctor that they trust, and what are they hearing from them, and then find the places where they feel comfortable to remove it or not. And big question, I mean, what I'm hearing is, have you been vaccinated?
Mhm.
Because that's the big issue, because not only does that lessen the ability to catch the disease, but that if you do catch it, it's not supposed to be as drastic for you. So those are interesting times and questions. That's the way I would approach it with them.
Yeah, the ones that I've talked through, I've really gone back to that piece of like what's in your control and what's not in your control, and where's your safety, like you're saying, like
Mhm.
following the facts, but also
Mhm.
understanding that the older adult generation, again, it's hard for them to talk about difficult things. It hasn't been the norm, like the things that are uncomfortable. So, as I work with older adults, it's about encouraging them of communicating to family members, I want to be around you, this is the way I feel safe. So it's no
Mhm.
insult.
Mhm.
It's just I'm
Right.
doing it. Yeah, I'm setting my boundaries and doing what I feel safe. And so the more that we can be vocal about that and share that with
Mhm.
people, I think the more
Mhm.
there's understanding on our own perspectives. But again,
Mhm.
coming from a generation that didn't want to always talk about difficult things,
Mhm.
I think that piles up in a lot of that. Um,
Mhm.
we know through these times of COVID, LCS has been trying to maybe reach in a little bit more than waiting for people to reach out. So, one of the things we've done during COVID is partner with Seniors First to actively call seniors that we know are isolated and reach out to them and offer them services. And so, I think if you're watching and you're wondering how to support and help older adults, I think that's something that we've seen instead of waiting for people to reach out, but to reach into those people that are lonely or isolated. What about you, Rick? What do you think people can do to really check in on older adults that they're concerned about or have just seen a decline in?
Well, I like what you're saying. I mean, I've gotten to where there's in my neighborhood, I have a individual across the street, and I have an individual next door, serious health issues. I kind of, when I see the guy across the street, or once in a while, even phone him and just ask how you doing. And it's not only he that has battled the illness, but his father has, and just giving him an opportunity to talk. Lady next door, my wife's more in touch with her, and just checking in, because she has no one, and no family. She has a few friends at her church and everything, and so we try to check in that way. I've also found myself, I'm a walker. I've got 3 or 4 routes in my neighborhood I walk. And so there's people I pass that I see regularly. Sometimes we have talked, sometimes we haven't. We've just greeted each other. And I try to do that too, especially those people that I never see walking with anyone else and seem like they're older and all, and just kind of greet them, ask how they're doing and all. And that way, people that I know more, I probably ask more, and probably try to be more kind to in that way. So, because I also know that there is that piece of, if you get too far into their space where they don't feel comfortable, it pushes them away, and I don't want to do that. And so gradually letting that build. So it's been good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's a piece too. And as older adults are coming back out or trying to engage more, it is just starting the conversation about what are you comfortable with. Like, we know it's important for you not to be isolated. Are you comfortable with me calling you, stopping by, going for a walk? Just like offering those scenarios pieces, I think are important. LCS this month is, I hope you guys have heard, but we have these postcards that you can sign up for. We will mail you postcards that are pre-stamped that you can send out to people that you just want to check in on. And I think that's a great piece to do with older adults. Throughout the Christmas holiday, we were able to package gifts together for older adults, just send them a little treat. And we got a lot of great responses about people just, feeling like they've received something special. I know it's old snail mail and it's paper, and I really hate all of that, but I think older adults at times value those gifts and just those little thoughts, especially when they seem to be struggling.
Okay.
So Any other thoughts for you, Rick, about older adults and mental health, other ways that or things that we should be aware of as we wrap up our time here?
Well, the other one, just for the sake of letting people know, LCS, that LCS does not accept Medicare, that
Mhm.
LCS does because of the generous donations of folks like Angie, Linda, many other people. We have an older adult client fund, and there's a lot of regulations and everything involved in doing this work through Medicare, and so we just have found a way to get past that in supporting it in this way. And so just wanted to make sure that folks out there know that, not only to utilize that service, but also to contribute to that service. I think would be important for folks to know, because that is who we want to serve. And
Yeah.
I think it's I had an appointment this morning, and it was really an assessment, and the individual talked in terms of as he looks upon other people, he really, what do you say? He says, I pray that I can look more upon them as God looks upon them, not as I too often look upon them. And I think that that's kind of across the board.
Yeah.
That can be older people looking at younger people, one race looking at another, younger people looking at older people. How does God look upon them? And I just think that's so important, because there's lots of, God has value inside of each one of us, and God places that value, and it's important for us to have the opportunity to share that. So
And I think it's hit me more and more as I'm rushing to do things for kids or rushing to get my errands done, that what's an overwhelming kind of extra layer of, running into the grocery store, or getting gas or whatever, other people value as, man, this is my only time to interact. And so, like you said, like when you're on a walk or when you're in the store,
mhm,
just greeting people
mhm.
and saying hi, like I think that goes a long way for mental health and just for how we engage and honor how God loves other people. The one other thing I wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
I have also heard, and it just brightened my face. I have heard of more and more older adults who utilize the grocery store picking up and delivering their groceries, who utilize DoorDash and
Yeah.
all. I have I have run across more and more, and it's like, whoa, I don't know how to do all of that stuff. Can you teach me? and and uh, and then my other daughter reminds me that, well, you're an older adult, Dad, so that's why you don't know how to do all that stuff. So anyway, but it's just, I think that COVID has done that also for older adults, for so many people. It has taught us some things that we didn't know, and I
Yeah.
think it's so important for us to not go back to how it was. So important to hang on to what we've learned and put it into our new life and our new normal.
Mhm.
So,
Well, as we
yeah.
wrap up, I want to share with you guys that the older adult program that LCS shared about our older adult fund, but also the work that we do in older adult communities here in Orlando, is done as probably our biggest mission project from LCS. We fundraise for that. We don't charge services for the older adult program that we do. So once a year we do a virtual 5K, and we're gearing up for that. That's going to happen towards the end of October, beginning of November, around All Saints Day. So if you ever want to be part of the work that we do with older adults, we would love the opportunity to partner with you. Or also, if you know an older adult in need of counseling, please refer them to us. We are continuing to offer phone and virtual sessions, but also face to face, to make mental health really accessible to those communities. So thanks so much, Rick, for your time and for talking about older adults with us. As you guys have questions or want to continue the conversation, please pop things in the comments, and we'll be across our social media this week talking more about older adults and mental health. Have a great Monday. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.